The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from dozens of species gathered for an emergency session. Ambassador Zektar of the Vorthak Empire stood at the central podium, his four arms gesturing dramatically as he addressed the assembly. "Esteemed colleagues," Zektar's voice echoed through the vast hall, "we have made contact with a new species. They call themselves humans and inhabit a small blue world in the Outer Rim territories." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. New species were always exciting discoveries, especially in the largely explored galaxy. Most civilizations had already joined the Galactic Council or been absorbed by one of the major empires. "What makes them special?" called out Counselor Brix from the Mechanical Collective, her robotic voice cutting through the chatter. Zektar's mandibles clicked in what his species considered amusement. "They are primitives. They have barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Their ships are crude, their weapons outdated, and their technology laughably simple. But here's the interesting part. They refused our generous offer to join the Vorthak Empire." The chamber erupted in shocked chittering and electronic bleeps. In the known galaxy, refusing the Vorthak Empire was unheard of. The Empire was the largest military force in the galaxy, controlling over 3,000 star systems. Their fleet numbered in the millions of ships, each one capable of glassing an entire planet. "They refused?" Ambassador Quillix of the Silk Road Federation asked, her tentacles writhing in disbelief. Did they not understand the honor being offered to them? "Oh, they understood perfectly," Zektar replied, his eyes glowing with dark amusement. "I explained to them that joining our empire would bring them protection, technology, and prosperity. All they had to do was provide us with military service and tribute, standard terms for any primitive species." "And their response?" prompted High Counselor Vex, the ancient being who presided over the assembly. Zektar's expression grew cold. "Their leader, some creature called a president, told me to go to hell, and that humanity would never bow to any alien empire. Then they had the audacity to order us to leave their system immediately." The chamber fell silent. Even the usually chatty Zephyrian delegates stopped their constant whispered conversations. No one spoke to the Vorthak Empire like that and lived to tell about it. "What action do you intend to take?" High Counselor Vex asked, though everyone already knew the answer. "We will make an example of them," Zektar declared. "A quick demonstration of our power should convince them to reconsider. If not, we will crush them completely. Either way, the galaxy will remember that defying the Vorthak Empire has consequences." Ambassador Quillix shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should learn more about them first? Study their culture, their capabilities? It might be wise to—" "Wise?" Zektar's laugh was a harsh, grating sound. "Counselor, they have barely 300 ships in their entire fleet. We have 10,000 ships in our nearest battle group alone. Their largest vessel is smaller than our escort frigates. What could we possibly need to learn about such insignificant creatures?" Unknown to the Galactic Council, deep in the Sol system, humanity was having a very different conversation. The emergency session of the United Earth Defense Council was taking place in a reinforced bunker beneath Geneva. President Sarah Chen sat at the head of a table surrounded by military leaders, scientists, and intelligence analysts. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," President Chen said, reviewing the reports spread before her. "This Vorthak Empire has conquered 3,000 star systems. They have millions of ships, and they want us to become their slaves." General Marcus Webb, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, nodded grimly. "That's about the size of it, Madam President. Their ambassador was quite clear about the terms. We provide them with soldiers and resources. They provide us with protection." "Protection from what?" asked Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of the Xenobiology Division. "From them, presumably," replied Admiral Lisa Park of the Space Navy. Classic protection racket. Pay up or get your knees broken, except on a galactic scale. President Chen stood and walked to the massive display showing the Sol system. Earth hung there like a blue jewel, surrounded by the orbital stations and defensive platforms that represented humanity's first line of defense against invasion. "What do our intelligence reports tell us about their military capabilities?" she asked. Colonel James Morrison, head of military intelligence, activated his datapad. "Their ships are large and heavily armed, but they rely primarily on plasma weaponry and conventional missiles. Their armor is energy-based shielding with some physical plating. Most importantly, they seem to follow very predictable tactical doctrines." Meaning, they're used to fighting primitive civilizations, ma'am. Species that fold after the first show of force. Their tactics are designed for intimidation rather than actual combat against a prepared enemy. President Chen turned back to the table. "And our capabilities?" Admiral Park smiled grimly. "Well, we may not have as many ships, but every single one of our vessels was designed with one purpose: to kill things that want to kill us. We've been preparing for this day since we first looked up at the stars. The Prometheus defense grid is fully operational," added General Rodriguez of Space Defense Command. "Every major asteroid in the system is equipped with hidden weapon platforms. Our stealth mines are deployed along all major approach routes, and our new quantum communication network means they can't jam our command structure." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward. "There's something else, Madam President. Our analysis of their technology suggests they've been fighting the same way for centuries. They've become complacent. Meanwhile, we've developed our military technology specifically to fight superior alien forces." President Chen returned to her seat. "Recommendations?" "We fight," General Webb said without hesitation. "We may be outgunned, but we're not outclassed. And if we roll over now, we'll never get another chance at freedom." "The people won't stand for surrender anyway," added Director Janet Mills of the Civilian Defense Council. When word of their offer got out, recruitment centers were flooded. Everyone wants to join the fight. President Chen looked around the table at the faces of humanity's leaders. She saw determination, fear, anger, and something else. A cold, calculating intelligence that had taken humanity from cave paintings to starship fleets in mere millennia. "Very well," she said. "Send a message to this Ambassador Zektar. Tell him that humanity rejects their offer now and forever. If they want our world, they'll have to take it." As the meeting broke up and the various commanders rushed to prepare their forces, no one noticed Dr. Vasquez quietly accessing a classified database. For the past 6 months, she had been working on a project that not even the president knew about. A detailed psychological profile of every known alien species based on their communications and behavior patterns. What she had discovered about the Vorthak Empire chilled her to the bone. They weren't just conquerors. They were slavers who systematically broke the will of any species they encountered. Their standard procedure was simple: demonstrate overwhelming force, demand submission, and then strip away everything that made a species unique until only obedient servants remained. But there was something else in the data that gave her hope. The Vorthak Empire had never encountered a species quite like humanity. Every other race they had conquered had been peaceful when first contacted. Humanity was different. They had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting wars against their own species, developing increasingly sophisticated ways to kill. More importantly, humans had a trait that seemed to be unique in the galaxy: the ability to become more dangerous when threatened. While other species became more cautious and defensive when faced with a superior foe, humans became creative, unpredictable, and willing to take enormous risks for the chance of victory. As Dr. Vasquez compiled her final report, she realized that the Vorthak Empire was about to learn a lesson that no other alien species had ever been able to teach them. They were about to discover what happened when they threatened a species that had been born in war, raised in conflict, and had spent centuries dreaming of the day they might meet their equals among the stars. The message from Earth reached the Vorthak fleet within hours. Ambassador Zektar read it with growing disbelief and rage. Not only had the humans refused again, but they had the audacity to threaten him with consequences if the Vorthak fleet didn't leave their system immediately. "Prepare the battle fleet," he ordered his aide. "We will show these primitives the price of defying the Empire." What neither the Vorthak Empire nor the Galactic Council realized was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for over 50 years. Ever since the first detection of alien signals, human governments had been working together to develop technologies and strategies specifically designed to fight a superior alien force. The war they thought would last mere days was about to become the longest and bloodiest conflict in galactic history, and by the time it was over, every species in the galaxy would know the answer to a question they had never thought to ask. What happens when you threaten a species that considers warfare an art form? The Vorthak Empire was about to find out why you should never start a war with humanity. The Vorthak war fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system in a display meant to terrify any primitive civilization into immediate surrender. 200 massive dreadnoughts formed the core of the formation, each one stretching nearly 2 kilometers in length. Surrounding them were 1,000 heavy cruisers, 3,000 destroyers, and countless smaller escort vessels. The sight had convinced over 1,000 species to surrender without firing a shot. Admiral Krixtal stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, his 4 eyes scanning the tactical displays with satisfaction. This would be a quick campaign. Perhaps the humans would surrender the moment they detected the fleet's approach. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the human homeworld," reported Communications Officer Vecht. "Put it through," Krixtal ordered, expecting to hear pleas for mercy. Instead, a calm human voice filled the bridge. "This is Admiral Lisa Park of the Earth Defense Forces. You are trespassing in human space. You have 1 hour to leave this system, or we will consider your presence an act of war." The bridge fell silent. Krixtal's mandibles clicked in disbelief. Did they just threaten us? "Sir, our sensors show only 47 human vessels in the immediate area," reported the sensor operator. "Small craft mostly. Nothing larger than 500 meters. Admiral Krixtal laughed, a sound like grinding metal. 47 ships against 5,000? These humans have lost their minds. Open a channel. "Humans," he broadcast, "you are clearly suffering from some form of mental deficiency. We offer you one final chance to surrender before we demonstrate why the Vorthak Empire rules the galaxy." The response came immediately. "Admiral Krixtal, this is Admiral Park. We have a saying on Earth. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. You have 58 minutes to leave our system." "Enough of this nonsense," Krixtal snarled. "All ships advance. Target their pathetic fleet. Make this quick." The Vorthak Armada began its inexorable advance toward the inner system. Standard doctrine called for a massive show of force, followed by systematic destruction of military targets. Within hours, Earth would be defenseless and ready for occupation. That was when the first surprise occurred. "Sir," the sensor operator called out urgently, "we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the asteroid belt. It's like the entire belt just lit up." Krixtal frowned. "Explain." I'm not sure, sir. There are thousands of contacts appearing. They look like weapon platforms, but they're built into the asteroids themselves. Sir, the entire asteroid belt is armed." Before Krixtal could respond, space around the Vorthak fleet exploded into violence. Concealed weapon platforms throughout the asteroid belt opened fire simultaneously. Hundreds of missiles launched from what had appeared to be ordinary space rocks. Particle beams lanced out from hidden installations. But these weren't ordinary weapons. Humanity had spent decades developing new technologies specifically to fight alien invasions. Quantum-entangled missiles that couldn't be jammed or confused by electronic countermeasures. Gravitational lensing weapons that focused stellar energy into devastating beams. Kinetic bombardment systems that accelerated chunks of matter to significant fractions of light speed. The outer formations of the Vorthak fleet staggered under the unexpected assault. Shields flared and failed under weapons they had never encountered before. 3 destroyers were completely vaporized in the opening seconds. "Impossible!" Krikstal roared. "How can primitives have weapons like these?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice echoed across all Vorthak communication channels, somehow having penetrated their secured networks with ease. "Admiral Krikstal, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez of Earth's Xenobiology Division. I thought you should understand what you're facing before this goes any further. You see, we've been studying you for months. We know how you fight, how you think, what your weaknesses are." "Our networks are secure," Krikstal protested. "How are you accessing our communications?" "Admiral, you've been using the same encryption protocols for centuries. We cracked them in about 6 hours. But that's not the point. The point is that you've made the same mistake that every bully throughout human history has made. You assumed that being bigger automatically makes you stronger." More weapon platforms came online throughout the system. Hidden installations on moons, in planetary rings, even disguised as space debris, began revealing themselves. The Vorthak fleet found itself caught in a carefully orchestrated crossfire. "You want to know our secret?" Dr. Vasquez continued. "While your empire was conquering primitive worlds, we were learning how to fight gods. Every human weapon system was designed with one question in mind. How do we kill something bigger, stronger, and more advanced than we are?" Admiral Krikstal watched in growing horror as his formation began to take serious casualties. These humans weren't fighting like any enemy the Empire had faced. Instead of trying to match the Vorthak fleet ship for ship, they were using the entire solar system as a weapon. "Sir!" his tactical officer shouted. "The human ships are moving to attack position, but they're not advancing normally. They're coming from all directions at once." Krikstal looked at the tactical display and felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The small human fleet wasn't staying together in formation like civilized military forces. Instead, each ship was moving independently, using the gravitational fields of planets and the interference from the asteroid belt to mask their approach. "They're using quantum stealth technology," his science officer reported. "Our sensors can't get a clear lock. Sir, these humans have been preparing for this fight for decades." The human ships struck like a pack of hunting predators. They didn't try to engage the massive Vorthak dreadnoughts in direct combat. Instead, they went after the support vessels, the communication ships, the supply lines. Every attack was precisely calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimum risk. Captain Sarah Mitchell piloted the human destroyer Defiance through the chaos of battle with the kind of precision that came from a lifetime of wargaming and simulation training. Her ship was 1/10 the size of the Vorthak vessels she was hunting, but it had been designed for exactly this kind of fight. "Target acquired," her weapons officer called out. "Vorthak heavy cruiser bearing 27 Mark IV. "Fire quantum torpedoes," Mitchell ordered. "Full spread." The Defiance's weapons were unlike anything in the Vorthak arsenal. The quantum torpedoes phased in and out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to intercept. When they struck the Vorthak cruiser, they didn't just damage the hull, they disrupted the fundamental quantum structure of the ship's armor. The cruiser's shields collapsed instantly. Secondary explosions rippled along its length as human weapons found weaknesses that shouldn't have existed. "How are they doing this?" Krikstal demanded, as another of his ships was crippled by weapons that seemed to ignore conventional defenses. Dr. Vasquez's voice answered him. We study our enemies, Admiral. For example, we know that Vorthak shield generators operate on a rotating frequency cycle. We know that your hull plating has molecular weak points every 2.3 meters. We know that your command structure depends on a centralized communication network that can be disrupted by targeting specific relay nodes. As if to prove her point, a coordinated human strike took out 3 communication ships simultaneously. Suddenly, entire sections of the Vorthak fleet found themselves cut off from central command. "Sir," his aide whispered urgently, "perhaps we should consider withdrawing and requesting reinforcements." Krixtal's pride warred with his growing sense of dread. The Vorthak Empire had never retreated from primitives, but these humans weren't fighting like primitives. They were fighting like a species that had been preparing for this exact scenario for generations. The battle continued for 6 hours. By the end, the Vorthak fleet had lost over 300 ships, nearly as many as they had lost in their last major war against the Crystalline Confederation. The human casualties were 12 ships destroyed and 37 damaged. "This is Admiral Park," came the transmission as the surviving Vorthak ships began to fall back toward the edge of the system. "You have 30 minutes to leave our space, or we'll be forced to continue defending ourselves." Krixtal stared at the tactical display in disbelief. How had primitives with inferior numbers and smaller ships managed to inflict such devastating casualties? The answer, he was beginning to realize, was that these weren't primitives at all. They were something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that had learned to make war into an art form. "Admiral," Dr. Vasquez's voice cut through his thoughts one final time. "Before you leave, there's something you should know. This was just our defensive fleet. If your empire decides to send reinforcements, you'll face our offensive capabilities. And trust me, Admiral, you really don't want to see what we've built for attacking." As the battered Vorthak fleet limped toward the hyperspace jump point, Admiral Krixtal realized that his empire had just made the worst mistake in its long history. They hadn't just attacked a primitive species, they had declared war on something far more dangerous. They had started a fight with a species that considered conflict to be the ultimate test of intelligence, creativity, and will. And now that the war had begun, Admiral Krixtal had the sinking feeling that the Vorthak Empire was about to learn just how badly they had underestimated their new enemy. The humans weren't just defending their world, they were preparing to take the fight to the enemy, and once humanity went on the offensive, the galaxy would never be the same again. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the Galactic Council convened in emergency session once again. This time, however, the atmosphere was very different. Where there had once been comfortable confidence in the established order, now there was barely controlled panic. High Counselor Vex's ancient voice carried a tremor as he addressed the assembly. "The situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections. In the past 6 months, the humans have conquered 17 Vorthak systems, liberated 43 enslaved species, and completely destroyed 2 entire battle fleets." Ambassador Zektar was notably absent from the proceedings. His flagship had been captured in the Second Battle of Proxima, and he was currently being held prisoner by human forces along with his entire command staff. His replacement, General Thrackmore, stood before the council with barely concealed terror. "How is this possible?" demanded Counselor Brix. "The reports claim that humanity still has fewer than 500 ships. The Empire has thousands of vessels remaining." General Thrackmore's 4 arms trembled as he accessed his datapad. "The numbers are irrelevant. These humans don't fight like any species we've ever encountered. They don't seem to understand the concept of impossible odds." "Explain," High Counselor Vex commanded. 3 weeks ago, a single human ship, a vessel they call the Retribution, attacked our stronghold at Vorthak Prime. 1 ship against a fully fortified system defended by over 200 vessels. The council chamber fell silent. Vorthak Prime was the heavily defended capital world of the Empire, surrounded by orbital battle stations and protected by the largest concentration of military assets in known space. The ship used some form of advanced stealth technology to penetrate our defenses, Thrackmore continued. But instead of attacking military targets, it broadcast a message on all frequencies, a recording of everything that happened during our pacification of the Zilanian species 50 years ago. Uncomfortable shifts rippled through the assembled delegates. Everyone knew what had happened to the Zilanians, but it was never discussed in polite company. The broadcast lasted exactly 1 hour and 17 minutes, Thrackmore said, his voice growing quieter. It showed everything: the orbital bombardments of civilian targets, the forced relocations, the breeding programs, the systematic destruction of Zilanian culture. And at the end, a human voice simply said, "This is what we're fighting against. This is what we'll prevent you from doing ever again." Ambassador Quillix leaned forward urgently. What was the response? 17 systems declared independence from the Empire within 24 hours. 3 more demanded immediate autonomy. The Zilanian resistance cells that we thought we had crushed years ago suddenly reactivated. But worst of all, the humans had somehow delivered the same broadcast to every enslaved species in our territory simultaneously. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. The Vorthak Empire controlled its vast territory through fear and the belief that resistance was hopeless. If enslaved species began to believe that liberation was possible, the entire imperial structure could collapse. That's not the worst part, Thrackmore continued. After delivering the broadcast, the Retribution didn't retreat. Instead, it began systematically destroying our orbital defense platforms. A single human ship held off our entire defense fleet for 6 hours while broadcasting tactical data to resistance cells on the planet's surface. 6 hours. Counselor Brix's electronic voice rose in pitch. How did one ship survive that long? We're still trying to understand their technology, Thrackmore admitted. Their ships seem to violate several known laws of physics. They can accelerate faster than should be possible, their weapons ignore conventional shielding, and their defensive systems seem to actually get stronger when under heavy fire. What the Galactic Council didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for interstellar war far longer than anyone realized. The truth was carefully hidden in classified files deep within Earth's military archives. Humanity hadn't just developed their technology in response to the Vorthak threat. They had been preparing for galactic-scale conflict since their first radio telescopes had detected the existence of massive alien civilizations. Every aspect of human space technology had been designed with one question in mind. How do you fight an enemy with a 1,000-year technological advantage? The answer had required completely reimagining how warfare could be conducted. Human ships weren't just faster and more maneuverable than alien vessels. They were designed to be unpredictable. While other species built their fleets according to standardized designs that had worked for centuries, humans built every ship to be unique. No 2 human vessels had exactly the same capabilities, weapons loadout, or tactical profile. More importantly, human military doctrine was based on a concept that was completely alien to the rest of the galaxy: asymmetric warfare. While other species sought to match their enemies, ship for ship and gun for gun, humans specialized in finding creative ways to turn their enemies' strengths into weaknesses. Captain Maria Santos of the human cruiser. Liberation demonstrated this principle during the Battle of Kepler Station. Facing a Vorthak fleet of 40 ships with only her single vessel, she used the station's own defensive systems against the attackers. The Empire's standard attack pattern relies on coordinated fire from multiple ships, she explained to her tactical officer as they approached the battle zone. They use their numerical advantage to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer firepower. So how do we beat them with one ship? Asked Lieutenant Commander Chen. Santos smiled grimly. We don't fight their ships. We fight their doctrine. The Liberation approached Kepler Station broadcasting false surrender signals while secretly hacking into the station's defensive network. When the Vorthak fleet moved into their standard attack formation around the station, Santos activated the station's own weapons grid. Suddenly, the Vorthak ships found themselves under fire from the very installation they were trying to capture. But that wasn't the worst part. Santos had reprogrammed the targeting system to use Vorthak identification signals. The station's weapons systematically targeted every ship with Imperial identification codes while ignoring the human vessel. In the chaos that followed, the Vorthak fleet found themselves fighting both the station and each other as their own ships were misidentified as threats by their formation's sensor network. The Liberation simply orbited the battle zone, picking off damaged vessels, while the Empire's own tactical doctrine destroyed their fleet from within. "Impossible," General Thrackmore whispered as he finished his report to the Galactic Council. "They destroyed 40 ships with one vessel and a space station. The survivors are too traumatized to serve effectively. Half of them are requesting transfers to non-combat positions." High Counselor Vex processed this information with growing alarm. "What are their strategic objectives? What do the humans want?" "That's the most terrifying part," Thrackmore replied. "They don't want territory or tribute. They don't want to conquer us or rule over us. They want something far worse. They want to free every enslaved species in the galaxy." The implications sent waves of panic through the assembled delegates. Most galactic civilizations depended on enslaved or subordinate species for their economic systems. If humanity succeeded in liberating even a fraction of the galaxy's enslaved populations, the resulting chaos could collapse interstellar civilization. "How do we stop them?" demanded Ambassador Quillix. "We can't," Thrackmore said quietly. "Every time we face them in battle, they learn more about our capabilities, while revealing nothing about their true strength. Every defeat makes them stronger while making us weaker, and worst of all, they're teaching their tactics to every species they liberate." Unknown to the Galactic Council, President Sarah Chen was at that moment addressing a very different assembly. The first Intergalactic Liberation Conference was taking place aboard the human dreadnought Freedom's Call, with representatives from 47 recently liberated species. "My friends," President Chen said to the diverse gathering of beings, 6 months ago, the galaxy was divided between the conquerors and the conquered. Today, we stand together as free peoples, united not by empire or fear, but by our shared commitment to liberty. The Zilanian delegate, her crystalline form still bearing scars from decades of Vorthak oppression, stood to address the assembly. "President Chen, our people are grateful beyond words for what humanity has done. But we must ask, what happens now? The Empire still controls thousands of worlds. Then we liberate them," Chen replied simply. "All of them. Every single enslaved species, every conquered world, every people living under alien oppression. We don't stop until the galaxy is free." "The Council of Synthetic Beings pledges our manufacturing capabilities to this cause," announced the delegate from the Machine Collective. "Our automated factories can produce weapons and ships faster than any biological species. The Aquatic Federations offer our expertise in stealth technology," added another representative. "We have been hiding from the Empire for centuries. Now we will teach others to hide as well." One by one, the liberated species pledged their unique capabilities to the growing alliance. The humans had given them something no galactic civilization had ever offered before, not just freedom, but the tools and knowledge to defend that freedom themselves. What the Galactic Council was slowly beginning to realize was that humanity had never intended to simply win a war against the Vorthak Empire. They had planned to fundamentally reshape how galactic civilization worked. Instead of a galaxy ruled by fear and dominated by the strong, they envisioned a galaxy where cooperation and mutual defense made tyranny impossible. As the Liberation Conference concluded, President Chen received a priority message from Admiral Park. The latest intelligence reports showed massive Vorthak fleet movements. The Empire was mobilizing everything they had for one final assault on Earth. "Let them come," Chen said quietly as she reviewed the tactical projections. "It's time to show the galaxy what a truly free species can accomplish." The final battle for the future of galactic civilization was about to begin. And when it was over, every species in the galaxy would understand why you should never start a war with humanity. Because humans don't just fight to win, they fight to free everyone else from those who would oppress them. The galaxy was about to learn that some species aren't content to merely survive. They're determined to make sure that freedom itself survives with them.